Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Unraveling the New Normal. My name is Jen Murnaghan and I am a business consultant specializing in social media and content marketing in a business called Digital Dandy. What am I doing here? Well, I'm trying to unpack what is going on in the world from the little bubble that I live in Hobart. And to help me with that, I am bringing in some of my friends, some of my family, and some of my colleagues to talk about different topics that surround us and the world that we live in. In this episode, I wanted to talk to someone who knew about a topic that I've been interested in for a long time, but haven't really mastered, and that is podcasting. So many of you out there might be absolutely avid podcast consumers, or you may even have your own podcast that you are broadcasting. But what is it that has made it so interesting and so popular? Really since 2018, there's been a massive spike. So I'm really curious as to what it is about the art of storytelling in the medium of podcasting that has really connected with so many people. So the first person that came to mind to talk about this topic is my younger sister, Vanessa. Now, Vanessa lives in Dublin, and she has very kindly got up early and is going to jump on this episode with me in just a second. But for anyone who has any podcasting gems that they want to share, please leave us a comment. And this is all about community sharing and any kind of information that is going to make someone's day. In the podcast realm, if there's a really great series that you have followed, if you are even launching your own podcast that is that you think our listeners might love, we'd love to hear from you. But now let me introduce you and bring in my dear sister, Vanessa.
Hello, Jen.
Hello, Vanessa. Good morning, Dublin.
Good getting sunny Dublin.
Oh, great. So Vanessa, you have been in at home for 6 weeks now. Is that right?
Right, that, yeah.
Yeah, and you have been an amazing resource to me for sources of entertainment and good things to listen to or watch while we stay at home and we isolate and look after ourselves. So that's why you were my perfect choice to talk about podcasting. Now, what's also interesting is that we have got different tastes, and I want to quiz you on why you enjoyed the podcast that you're going to share with us. And I want to kind of understand from a broader spectrum as to what it is that makes a really good podcast. So I hope you're going to help me with that.
I hope so.
First of all, can I ask you, how is everyone at home?
Everyone is doing the best they can. Yeah. Mom and Dad are, how do I say this without getting in trouble? They're cocooning. And that means that they basically are recommended that they don't go outside the door.
Yeah. So the restrictions in Ireland for Australians here is that you have a 2-kilometer radius, don't you, that you have to stay within?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And unless you need to do, say, grocery shopping, or it's what do they call it? They call it like
essential shopping.
Essential shopping, essential travel. So like frontline workers, or whatever, things like that. And then if you're over 70, they want you to stay indoors and not mix with anybody.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Mum has been flying around the garden and actually getting really fit. And we were just doing loads of jobs at home and just trying to stay sane.
Yeah, and being patient and
Being
finding
patient.
really interesting forms of entertainment, because while we all kind of navigate this new normal, whether it's through alternative employment or pausing employment, or it's looking after children, or looking after parents, or supporting parents, we do actually need to switch off and find a form of escape. When did you discover podcasting? Can you remember?
Yeah, I think it was about 6 years ago, maybe. It was Serial was the first podcast I listened to.
Yes. Okay.
A lot of people, I think that was the first one, and I was obsessed. You're just like, couldn't wait to hear the next episode, and it was very exciting. And then from there on, I kind of went to look for more. And after Serial, there wasn't one for a while, but actually the second, I think Serial did another series called S Town, and that was
yes, that's
amazing.
the one that I listened to.
Yeah, and that's been made into a film now.
Oh, has it really?
Yeah, I actually heard that on another podcast that they're making that into a movie.
That's a really interesting kind of diversification for journalists, is getting into podcasting and that kind of true crime aspect of I guess their own storytelling.
Well, Joe Exotic, sorry, Jen. Joe Exotic was the Tiger King was the podcast. That's how I listened to him about 2 years ago.
Oh,
I knew who he was. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there's all these different forms of stories that are then being retold in different ways. So, but from what I've been reading about the history and the popularity of podcasting, it's like a multitasker's best way of being fulfilled. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, not only is it a multitasker's dream, but it also is it fills a lot of roles, even for a company on a long journey, putting it to sleep. That's one. I have like specific podcasts that I'll put on. Like if there's ones I really want to listen to and don't want to miss, I won't put it on. But if there's ones that are slightly boring, I'll put on that, and I'm asleep within about 10 minutes.
Do you think it's do you select them based on their tone of voice, or do you think that is a way that kind of lulls you to sleep, not necessarily being boring, but there's some sort of rhythm that in the way that they tell the story, that kind of
it must be. It's like the Calm stories.
Okay. Or it's like when you would be told a story when you were small, and sometimes you fall asleep. Or certainly if I try and read in bed these days, I'd be lucky if I read the first paragraph, and my head will be nodding. So maybe it's
we actually found, completely aside, I found a baby book belonged to me, and The Three Bears was my favorite story, and that sums it up. Just put me asleep.
Yeah. So I think that element of the craft of storytelling is really interesting to me. Is the tones, and then particularly for the likes of Serial or the likes of S Town, or some of the ones that we'll look at in a second, is the pace in which these stories are being told. And obviously there are different objectives for the people who have created them. Some will be a kind of a marketing strategy to get them to connect to them in a different form, or build a community, or maybe promoting an upcoming event, or a book or something like that. Or maybe it's just pure storytelling, or sharing sharing information, like in a lot of the business podcasts. And I guess that's where I have dipped into, is listening to podcasts to see how they have been produced, and also, for my own kind of professional development. But you have really looked at and using them for entertainment
and information as well, and storytelling. And like, I wouldn't go near a business podcast. Go near, even though the number one podcast in Ireland is David McWilliams, who's an economist.
Right.
I'm just allergic, because it just scares me a little bit, all about economies and stuff. And then I do listen to political podcasts, like the New York Times. The Daily is a really, really good one, just to keep a handle on what's going on in the States, because they're not really one way or the other. They're very balanced. Which is pretty hard to get it from the States. And they also do cool little stories of, they'll do the Harvey Weinstein trial, or I don't know, things, Jeffrey Epstein and stuff like that. So that's things that I would spark my interest.
Yeah, and I guess context is that you have worked as a legal secretary, so you have another interest in that that aspect of life, I guess. Let's dip into some of the examples that you wanted to share, and I'm going to quiz you on a couple of these because I'm really interested into why you like them, and if we can kind of break them down into what do you think the purpose of them is, and also what do you think the hosts want out of creating a podcast?
Okay.
Let's dive in. Okay, the first one. Let's start with. Let's go to America. Okay. And we're actually covering 3 countries, I think, with these. We've got 3. The first one is called the Armchair Expert, and tell us a little bit about who hosts it and what this podcast is about.
This is a podcast that was launched few years ago now, I think, by Dax Shepard, who's an actor and a writer. He's probably a producer. He's involved in he's a actor who was kind of launched by Ashton Kutcher, doing punked, so kind of silly stuff. But actually, he's a really, really smart, very interesting guy, really. He's married to Kristen Bell from the Frozen fame, and himself and his friend, his best friend, they go up into his converted garage attic, and they sit down with a range of different people, from musicians to a lot of actors and doctors and spiritual people, and they literally sit down for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just shoot the breeze, really.
Yeah, right. So what I liked about his website when I looked at this was that he likes to explore other people's stories and the celebrating them, looking and learning about the challenges and the setbacks that then ultimately led to their growth and betterment. Are there any particular episodes that really rang true, or what do you think it is about the way in which he interviews, or the way in which they connect, that makes this podcast work?
Well, I think that the celebs, for example, are pretty relaxed around him, because he is one too. So they know that he's not just going in for the kill because of trying to get a scoop, or he's not a journalist. He also is a recovering alcoholic and drug addict.
Right. Okay.
Which he does mention every single podcast, but that's fine. And he also talks about how he's with women. He's really, it's interesting. He always kind of gives a male perspective on dating and stuff like that. And he's funny, but he's also really super honest, and he's not afraid to tell a person how much he loves them. So what do I like about him? Yeah, the celebs will reveal stuff that they don't normally reveal. I think they forget what they are.
Yeah, okay.
They're so comfortable. The last one I heard, I think I told you about it, was the Sheryl Crow one, and she's really interesting. Yeah, she's really interesting. Just talking about her life, and she kind of went into kind of introspective, and how having everything and being really successful, and she was successful quite later in life. Her album came out when she was 30.
That's right.
And she just kept driving, and then she went to therapy, and was like, why am I not happy? And it was just interesting. And then the men that she would date, and obviously she dated Lance Armstrong for a while, and how she was going for the top. Anyway, look, it was very interesting. It was a very good one.
Yeah. Okay. So out of 10, what would you rate Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard?
I would say a good 8.
Okay. And he shares episodes weekly, I think, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
And they run anywhere between, so these will be one of the longer ones. So they run anywhere between an hour, just over an hour, to an hour and a half. So that's a pretty lengthy, because traditionally podcasts are really enjoyed because they can be bite-sized, snackable kind of content, whereas something like this, I mean, that's quite a long time to sit and listen. So I guess that would be really great for a long journey.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next one. I think we're going to move to the UK for this one. I was really interested in this choice because we both share a real fascination with the British royal family and the history more so than the current, I think. But maybe correct. Well, for me anyway, Vanessa, and I'd love to know if you agree that certainly my interest in palaces and ball gowns and that kind of princess history of that world, but also the history of how they came to be, and the Russian royals and the connections between the Windsors, I thought was always fascinating. We as kids we would go on holidays in the summer to England across on the ferry, and we would be taken to all of these amazing stately homes, and I used to always pretend or dream of what on earth it would be like to, and this is coming from reading The Secret Garden and the Bronte books, and getting lost in all of that kind of amazing historical fiction. That was something that I really loved as a kid. Do you remember those trips? And is that where you got your interest, or where do you think we share that common interest? I think it's maybe it's a shared love of history.
Yeah, I think so. I remember the trip to Yorkshire vaguely when I was little, but I don't really remember much of it. But we used to go around houses around at home too, because we've a few stately homes still knocking around in Ireland. Yeah. So yeah, I even just the smell of that when you walk in, there's a sort of an oily smell. Even the Kenny Castle is one where I remember like don't touch the wallpaper, and it was because it was silk, and you'd be like this.
Yes,
yeah. So like definitely there, and then later on it was Pride and Prejudice, the BBC drama with Colin Firth.
Yes, exactly. There was all of those, historical
body strippers.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Princess Diana, the whole princess, like Mum loved Princess Diana. So Hello Magazine was a very much part of our growing up.
Yeah, true. And I guess because of the heritage that we all share, and the story, it's the stories of all those people and the stories of their lives, I guess is what was always so fascinating. So this is what leads us to this next podcast, and this is one by India Hicks. And tell us who India Hicks is for people who have never heard of her. Perhaps her family name might be more familiar.
Yeah, India Hicks's grandfather was Lord Louis Mountbatten. He was an earl or a lord, who's a cousin of the Queen. And you will probably be, if you watched The Crown, you would have been familiar. He was played by Charles Dance in The Crown, and he was an admiral in the Royal Navy, and he's a war hero, and he became the last vice admiral. Viceroy to India.
That's right.
Just before they gained independence. And her mother is Lady P, his daughter. And her mum was Edwina Ashley. Lady P's mother was Edwina Ashley, but we'll get into that again. So it's basically India got involved in this podcast to just kind of share the stories of her mother's life. And an intriguing woman, and lovely woman, actually. She's so unassuming.
Yeah. So, within this incredible life of privilege, when you break it down, it's actually this gorgeous exchange between an adult daughter and her aging mother. And this extraordinary life from Gandhi to
mongooses.
Yes, exactly, to India, to the Indian
life,
the massive change when they were leaving India and the British rule, then through to their lives with Princess Alice, the mother-in-law of the Queen, who features was such an interesting character, I thought, in The Crown. And then, of course, the sad demise of Mountbatten. After all, but tell us about who Edwina Ashley was. She doesn't sound very royal.
No, she wasn't, but she was a baroness's daughter, and
right.
She came from an awful lot of money. I remember I just read a bit about her that she was left by an uncle or a grandfather. Was it £1.5 million, which would be the equivalent of £88.4 million in today's money.
That's a nice gift.
Yeah, that's a nice little earner. Yeah, and she was quite the character.
Yeah.
So she was. She was very fond of having lovers throughout her marriage, and her husband was too, less so. But the lovers used to kind of come to the house and stay, and they were just like one of the family.
Yeah, quite a different
world.
A lot
more, she was a lot more interested in her lovers than her children. I think that's one of the things Lady P has made out. And actually, despite all the privilege and all the furs and the travel and everything, it actually was a very tough time, for children growing up.
And what era are we talking about here?
We're talking about early, from kind of 1930s onwards, 20s, 30s, 40s, really, because she'd be nearly 90, maybe. Maybe a bit younger than the Queen, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And it's who's 92 or 94 now, I believe. So it's really a lovely insight into or a very interesting. I'm not sure that it was lovely, but but a really interesting insight into the social classes and also how they interacted as a family. So certainly for India to be interviewing her mother like this would have been unheard of, when Lady Pamela was even India's age or younger. So I think this is a really, really interesting choice and a lovely, as I said, a lovely exchange between mother and daughter, and hysterical to listen to the utterly posh English accents.
Yeah, and even Lady Edwina gave birth in. So was it in? I think it was in Rome. She gave birth to Lady Pamela in a hotel. It was like she was around in a carriage, just around the couple streets, and she was, I must have this baby. It was, and some royal king got involved. Maybe it was Spain or somewhere. I think the King of Spain, who of course was a cousin, got involved, and it was hilarious, absolutely hilarious. And I think herself and her sibling were left in a house abroad somewhere, maybe in the countryside, and with a nanny, and the mum didn't come back for nearly a year during the war, and she just left her like, see you later, I'm back.
There's lots of I've heard lots of stories about that. Very different world. But anyway, let's move on to our third topic, and we're bringing it back to Ireland. Introduce us to your final podcast recommendation, please, Vanessa.
Number 3 is Thanks a Million, presented by Angela Scanlon.
And who is, now I've never heard of Angela Scanlon. Maybe she's very popular in Ireland, but please tell me who she is.
Angela is a presenter on Irish television and British television. She's done TV shows for RTE, and she's also a presenter of different things on the BBC in England.
Okay, and this is lovely. Yes, I'm a hyper thanker, but am I thankful? Oh, that is so powerful. I think the copywriting in this landing page for her podcast is so brilliant. The podcast that thinks about thanks with the good, the great, and the grateful, rather than the good, the bad, and the ugly. I just think that is terrific. So, who does she talk to? Who does she talk to, and what's the podcast all about?
It hasn't. I think it's gone. This is probably the second series, so it hasn't been going on that long. So her last guest was Marion Keyes, who's an Irish writer. Publicly has been has talked openly about her struggles with alcoholism, and she's actually been sober a long time. But she was just talking about her story of getting sober, and she has like tough days and hard days, but she's incredibly funny and light-hearted. But Angela and herself just had a really good chat, and Angela helped Marion see things a different way, and Marion helped Angela. It was really interesting. And then she always starts off with what 3 things I'm thankful for between her and her guest.
Yeah.
So at this time, it's nice to have that, because I'm sure everybody can struggle sometimes.
Yeah, and I think with what we're all managing and how we're kind of traversing these eggshells is to be able to tune into to podcasts like this, just to bring us back and be grounded, and listening to other people's stories and see what their challenges are and how they're managing, and I think the ability to share in a lighthearted way but a meaningful way, that their vulnerabilities, that is incredibly important in now, and nobody is unaffected by this pandemic, whether you're famous, whether you're royal, or whether you're an American celebrity. So I think the choices that you've shared with us have something really lovely in common, is that they've got this sense of storytelling. They have humor and real entertainment values, but also allow us to learn, but also go away maybe thinking somehow a little bit differently. So what do you think will be your next podcast category that you would like to explore before we finish up today?
Well, I do love a true crime, but I actually have been veering a bit away from them, because some of them are just too dark. I don't know. Maybe I should dip into the business ones.
Well, you don't have to, but there's there's sports, there's current affairs, or maybe just stick with these lovely storytelling.
Yeah,
options.
and I do like those ones. I do definitely like. I love that. Indy Hicks's one is definitely one of my favorites, because they're just stories from the horse's mouth. It's not dry from a book. It's from it's real. It's real. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's so if we were to sum up the characteristics of a good podcast, what would you say would be like the top 3 or top 5, if there's that many things that you look for that you think works when it comes to people telling stories or interviewing others, and sharing some good stories?
Tell you what is very interesting. Really important is the person doing the talking. It's why broadcasters are naturally very good at it, because sometimes the story can be amazing, but whoever's delivering it is, and if they're just reading it off the bat, and they're just reading it, it's very off-putting. There's one very popular, I'm not going to name it, but there's one very, very popular podcast that's out at the moment, and I know that the people doing it just read it, and I've had to turn it off because I can read it myself.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's like an Audible book. Kind of, but they're just reading it.
They're just reading their notes. And what else? Yeah, the quality and length actually is a good one, because like Dax's one is unusual because it is so long, but he still can stick with it. But the thing is, the podcast, you can go and come back. It's like Netflix.
Yeah,
if you want.
Yeah, that's true.
Pause it and come back.
Yeah,
it's
like
that's very true. The people were complaining the Irish one was too long, but you can stop it and come back.
Yeah. Very cool. Thank you, Vanessa. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me with my business hat on. And I'm actually going to look forward to what I would like to do if I was to make any changes or if I could do anything different, and maybe I can in the future, is I would like to have Bluetooth in my car so I can listen to these podcasts, but my car is so old that it doesn't have that capacity. But one can dream. Thank you. I hope you go and have a lovely day, and that sooner rather than later, we'll all be able to be together again.
May 6th, I think. May 5th to May 6th is when we're getting our announcement before what's the next step.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll just we'll listen attentively
and
flatten the curve.
curve.
Yeah, and listen to the people who are leading us out of all this.
Do what you're told. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Thanks, Vanessa.
You're welcome.
I look forward to talking to you not on camera, and not in a broadcast studio very soon.
Okay.
All right.
Bye. Love you. Bye.
Bye.